One of the classical negotiation dilemmas is, should you tell your counterpart what your deadline is or keep it as a top secret? There are, of course, reasons to support both decisions, and today we will discuss a situation in which it is in your best interest to let your opponent know your deadline. Let's dive in. Hello guys, it's Žarko. Welcome to Cobblestone Negotiations, a channel where we deal with all aspects of negotiation. In the NBA, players are organized in the National Basketball Players Association, NBPA, founded in 1954, and every now and then they negotiate with the league and club owners about their working conditions contained in the Collective Bargaining Agreement, CBA. Exactly that was the case in 1998 when this association was on the other side of the negotiation table with NBA clubs owners. The previous collective bargaining agreement, signed in September of 1995, was supposed to last for 6 years, with a clause giving owners the possibility to renegotiate it after 3 years if players' salaries exceed 51.8% of basketball-related income. And exactly that happened in 1998 after several long-term, above $100 million player extension contracts were signed. In the first place, contracts with Garnett, Shaquille O'Neal and Alonzo Mourning. So the players' salaries reached 57% of the basketball-related income, which easily triggered the mentioned clause. On March 23, 1998, 29 owners of the clubs voted to reopen the CBA, and after 9 unsuccessful negotiation sessions in the following 3 months, the lockout started on July 1st. The causes for the lockdown were several. Firstly, after 2 decades of prosperity, attendance in some cities began to decline, even 15 to 20%. Secondly, although the season of 97-98 was successful on the court as Bulls won their 3rd consecutive and 6th title in just 8 years, some negative episodes involving players like on-court violence, resisting arrest, illegal possession of weapons and similar things did cause concern. But what mostly worried the owners is that player salaries expanded rapidly in the previous 2 decades. In 1977, the league's highest paid player was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, with $625,000 annually. 10 years later, Patrick Ewing was the highest earner with $2.75 million, and in 1997, Michael Jordan already earned $30 million per year. So the money was the thing that worried the owners the most. Another important issue to consider is that until 94-95 CBA, sports agents didn't participate in the negotiations, and now they were another important factor to consider. They still were not directly at the table, but through advising their clients they had their say. Moreover, neither side was completely satisfied with the previous 95 CBA, as the owners wanted to introduce a fixed salary cap to boost their own profitability. And of course, the lowest paid players were not satisfied with such a great disparity between the lowest and highest paid players. The main issues discussed during the 98 CBA negotiations were the salary cap, free agency, the rookie pay scale, minimum salaries, and players' unacceptable behavior. The salary cap means that the limit is placed on the players' payrolls, and players are guaranteed to receive a certain percentage of the designated league's revenue. It favors small market teams, leveling the playing field with the most popular basketball cities. In the season of 84-85, the salary cap was $3.6 million, which increased to $30 million in the season of 98-99. What also adds to the complexity of this issue is that there wasn't a fixed cap, but the so-called soft salary cap, allowing many exceptions. For example, teams could sign a replacement for an injured player, paying him up to 50% of the injured player's salary, without affecting a salary cap. And the most famous exception was the Larry Bird exception, allowing teams to re-sign their own free agents at an unlimited amount of money, again without affecting a salary cap. Thanks to this rule, Jordan's salary in the year when he retired would have been $37.5 million, even larger than the entire team's salary cap of $30 million. What concerns the minimum salary, there was a huge disparity between star players and the bottom payroll players. The minimum salary was $272,500 and an average salary was $2.6 million, obviously pulled upwards with star player salaries. In this case, more representative would be median salary, which was $1.4 million. As Danny Shays noticed, this was an uneven negotiation, as you had 29 sophisticated billionaires against 400 college dropouts. Moreover, it was a battle of billionaires against millionaires, so that also tells a thing or two about who had the leverage. Just to remind you, some of the wealthiest owners at the time were Portland's Paul Allen from Microsoft, Orlando's Richard DeVos from Amway, and Miami's Mickey Arison from Carnival Cruise Lines. Anyway, the chief negotiators in front of the league and the owners were the commissioner David Stern, his deputy Russell Granick, and legal counsel Jeffrey Mishkin. On the other side were Billy Hunter, NBPA President Patrick Ewing, and the legal counsel Jeffrey Kessler. Stern is a Columbia Law School graduate, considered one of the greatest sports commissioners. At the time of this negotiation, he was already very experienced, serving in the NBA firstly as an attorney and afterwards occupying the position of commissioner since 1983. He was referred to as Easy Dave as he got along with everyone. However, many witnessed his yelling episodes during this negotiation, so he obviously was a complex character. Across the table was Billy Hunter, an attorney and a former kick returner in the NFL, well known for his tough negotiation style. He even got his job as a player's representative for this CBA by only attending one job interview with a future client, as he refused to go to the second round with the later hired headhunting firm, as he already said in advance that he won't do an interview with a third party. Players liked his aggressive style, so he was hired. To better understand the dynamics of this negotiation, it is important to know that 29 owners were a much more solid group represented by David Stern, while 400 plus players were very heterogeneous, as there were very rich players who were the most affected by these negotiations, but in the same time they could easily survive a whole season without a paycheck. And there were also players that lived from the next one. Of course, it didn't help as well that many of them were big spenders, so their lifestyle didn't allow them any emergency cushion to rely on. Even the president of NBPA, Patrick Ewing, had a very clumsy statement saying, "We basketball players make a lot of money, but we spend a lot too." I'm not sure if he wanted to cause sympathy, but I guess I don't need to tell you how this statement was received by the working class fans. What is also important is that a lot of negotiation was conducted through media, not face to face. And that environment suited a more solid group as the owners were. Moreover, the league had an uninterrupted stream of cash flow during the entire lockout, as television contracts were designed in the way that the league be paid even if the games were not played, with the obligation to return money for unplayed games only in 3 years. So another reason for owners to be more relaxed. Anyway, the lockout started on July 1st, 1998, after a series of negotiations to try to come to the agreement. Before this lockout, there has never been any lost games in the NBA due to the similar reasons. Moreover, the lockout in July and August doesn't really hurt anybody, so the temperature only started to rise after this calm period has passed. There was a group of players that seemingly had leverage over the owners as they had guaranteed contracts. But as the league wasn't in this situation until now, nobody really knew what that would mean in this particular situation. So those players thought they had leverage over the owners, and it might have been the case if it stayed just as a threat to the owners. But no. It was a huge negotiation mistake that players made when in October they asked for the arbitrage regarding these guaranteed contracts, demanding to be paid even when they do not play. The arbitrator decided that the owners are not obliged to honor those contracts, so the players lost their leverage. What is interesting, where the players' union had won the arbitration, it would have probably caused further division amongst paid and unpaid players. Anyway, it showed once more that the threat unfulfilled is more effective than the fulfilled one, as after that the situation is diffused and the party that threatened, if the threat wasn't legit, loses its leverage or credibility, or even both. Although the league was winning this negotiation, in October they decided to drop their demand of a hard cap, as they knew it would be very hard to enforce it, as star players were already paid close to the cap, so there wouldn't be any room for other 10 or 11 guys. So the question is, was this hard cap demand just a bargaining chip for the league's real demands concerning the percentage of revenue that should be allocated to the players? In the period when the parties were the furthest away from each other, there were extreme ideas from both sides. Players entertained the idea of forming their own league, although it is not clear where they would play. And some owners were discussing the idea of replacing the players, although in this case it is not clear where they would find so many high-quality players outside an NBA. But one of the key moments in this negotiation was a secret meeting between lead negotiators from both sides that took place on December 23rd, 1998 in LA. Before this meeting, both sides were in trenches fighting over their positions, without uncovering the real interests behind them. However, with this meeting and some previous contacts, the back channel for negotiation was wide open, which allowed the exchange of the ideas before they become public and heavily criticized in the media. Soon after, the latest offer from players was rejected by the owners on January 4th, 1999. And the league said that if the agreement wasn't achieved until January 7, that complete season would be cancelled. So it was an arbitrary deadline, but now somehow everyone had a much higher sense of urgency. It wasn't a deadline carved in stone, but it was enough to make or break the deal. Moreover, to increase the heat, Stern sent mails directly to all players with the league's proposal. Players should vote whether to accept this deal or not, and the sentiment was that it would be rejected. However, the night before the vote, Stern and Hunter met and reached a compromise that later passed the vote, both from owners and players. I will not go into details of the agreement, as it doesn't really matter for our story. The point is that the owners had an upper hand in this negotiation, especially after the arbitration in their favor, but they didn't force it, and at the end they made a compromise, allowing players to save their face, as that's the only way that the agreement can be implemented. Worth mentioning is that the owners kept player salaries in the range between $9 and $14 million, and a rookie pay scale was introduced. Anyhow, this negotiation was heading to the dead end until they imposed a deadline on players, making this negotiation more concrete and preventing the whole thing from getting out of control with the whole season lost. Therefore, if you are in a never-ending negotiation, try imposing a deadline and you will probably see things moving. Only pay attention not to ask too much in this last demand linked to the deadline, because if the other party breaks the deadline and nothing happens from your side, then you would lose your credibility. As a result of this negotiation, the new season started on February 5th, 1999, after 204 days of lockdown, and it was shortened to 50 games per team instead of 82. If you find this story interesting, please like the video and subscribe to this channel. See you in the next negotiation story.